Dae-sung stood in the middle of his empty restaurant, holding a worn dish towel in his hands. The tables were gone. The chairs were stacked in the corner. Brown boxes filled with kitchen equipment sat near the front door, waiting to be loaded onto a small transport ship. After 15 years, Earthly Flavors was closing forever. He walked slowly to the counter and ran his hand across the smooth surface. How many meals had he prepared here? How many customers had smiled when they tasted his food? He couldn't count them all. But those days were over now. The restaurant looked so different when it was empty. The walls seemed bare without the photos of Earth that used to hang there. Pictures of mountains, oceans, and forests. He had put them up to remind himself of home. Now they were packed away in one of the boxes. Dae-sung moved to the kitchen and looked at the stove one last time. It was old but reliable. He had cooked thousands of dishes on this stove. Soups that warmed the body. Stews that filled the belly. Rice dishes that reminded travelers of home. Every meal was made with care. He remembered the day he first opened the restaurant. He was 30 years old then, full of hope and dreams. He wanted to share human food with the galaxy. He believed that cooking could bring different species together. For a while, it worked. Aliens from all over came to taste Earth's cuisine. They were curious about human culture. They asked questions about the ingredients. They wanted to know the stories behind each dish. But things changed 3 years ago. Big corporations moved into the station. They brought food synthesizers that could make any meal in seconds. Fast, cheap, and convenient. Customers stopped coming to his restaurant. Why wait 30 minutes for a home-cooked meal when a machine could give you the same thing in 3 minutes? Dae-sung tried to explain that his food was different. It wasn't just about taste. It was about the care that went into making it, the time spent preparing ingredients, the love added with every stir of the pot. But most customers didn't understand. They just wanted something quick. His savings ran out 2 months ago. He could barely pay the rent. Yesterday, the station manager told him he had to leave. The space would be rented to another corporation, probably another synthesizer shop. Dae-sung picked up a small wooden box from the counter. Inside was his grandmother's recipe book. The pages were yellow with age. Some recipes were written in her shaky handwriting. Others were stained with food from years of use. This book was his most precious possession. His grandmother had given it to him before he left Earth. He remembered her words. Cooking is not just about feeding the body. It is about feeding the soul. When you cook for someone, you give them a piece of your heart. A tear rolled down his cheek. He wiped it away quickly. There was no time for sadness. He had to finish packing and leave the station. His ship was old and needed repairs, but it could still make the journey back to Earth. Maybe he could find work there. Maybe he could start over. He placed the recipe book carefully into his backpack. Then he walked to the front door. His hand touched the door handle. This was it. Once he walked out, he would never come back. He took a deep breath and pulled the door open. That's when he felt it. A gentle tug on his sleeve. Dae-sung looked down and froze. A small creature stood beside him. It was no bigger than a house cat. Its body was covered in scales that shimmered blue and green in the light. It had 4 legs, 2 small wings folded on its back, and a long tail that curled around its feet. Its eyes were golden and bright, looking up at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. A dragon. A real dragon. Dae-sung had heard stories about dragons. They were ancient creatures, older than most civilizations in the galaxy. Some people said they were myths. Others claimed to have seen them from far away. But nobody he knew had ever spoken to one. Dragons kept to themselves, hidden away in parts of the galaxy where few dare to go. Don't go, the dragon said. The voice was clear and gentle, speaking perfect standard galactic. Dae-sung's mouth opened, but no words came out. He just stared. The dragon tilted its head. Please, I need to talk to you. Dae-sung blinked several times. Was this real? Had the stress of losing his restaurant finally broken his mind? He looked around the empty street outside. No one else was there. Just him and this impossible creature. You can talk. Dae-sung finally managed to say. Of course I can talk, the dragon replied. Its tail swished back and forth. My name is Hanul. I have been watching you for many weeks. Watching me? Dae-sung felt a chill run down his spine. Why? Hanul looked behind them, toward the dark restaurant. Can we speak inside? It is important. Dae-sung didn't know what to do. Every instinct told him this was strange and possibly dangerous. But something in the dragon's eyes made him pause. There was no threat there, only sadness and hope mixed together. He stepped back and held the door open. All right, come in. Hanul walked into the restaurant with surprising grace. The dragon's claws made soft clicking sounds on the floor. It jumped onto one of the counter stools and sat there, wrapping its tail around the seat. Dae-sung closed the door and turned to face his unusual visitor. What do you want from me? Hanul looked at him for a long moment. I need your help. You are the only one who can save my sister. Your sister? Dae-sung walked closer, but kept his distance. What's wrong with her? She is dying, Hanul said quietly. The golden eyes dimmed with sadness. She has an illness called spirit fade. It happens when dragons lose their connection to emotions and memories. If she doesn't get help soon, she will fade away completely. Dae-sung felt his heart sink. Even though he had just met this creature, he could feel its pain. I'm sorry to hear that, but I'm just a cook. I don't know anything about dragon medicine. You should find a doctor. Hanul's eyes brightened when Dae-sung asked about the ingredients. The small dragon lifted one clawed foot, and a soft blue light appeared above its palm. The light formed into a crystal, no bigger than Dae-sung's thumb. It floated in the air, spinning slowly. This crystal contains all the information you need, Hanul explained. It shows the location of each ingredient and how to find them. But I must warn you, the journey will not be easy. Some ingredients are guarded, others are in dangerous places, and we do not have much time. Dae-sung reached out and took the crystal. It felt warm in his hand. How much time does your sister have? 30 galactic days, Hanul said softly. Maybe less. Her condition gets worse every day. When I left her, she could barely open her eyes. She has forgotten so many things already. Soon, she will forget everything, including herself. The sadness in Hanul's voice made Dae-sung's chest tight. He knew what it felt like to lose someone you loved. His grandmother had passed away 5 years ago. He still missed her every day. Tell me about your sister, Dae-sung said, sitting cross-legged on the floor. What is her name? Hanul settled down as well, curling its tail around its body. Her name is Bora. She is my older sister by 300 years. That might sound like a long time to you, but for dragons, it is not so much. I am only 200 years old, still very young. Dae-sung tried to imagine living for 200 years. He couldn't. What is she like? A small smile appeared on Hanul's face. If dragons could smile. Bora is kind and wise. She loves to watch the stars. She can name every constellation in the galaxy. She tells the best stories about the old times, before humans or most aliens traveled through space. She taught me everything I know. She sounds wonderful. Dae-sung said. She is, Hanul replied. That is why I cannot let her fade away. She deserves to remember all the beautiful things she has seen, all the friends she has made, all the joy she has experienced. Dae-sung nodded slowly. He understood now why this was so important. You mentioned a meal of remembrance needs 7 ingredients. What are they? Hanul pointed at the crystal in Dae-sung's hand. Look into it. Think about the ingredients. Dae-sung held the crystal up to his eye. As soon as he focused on it, images appeared in his mind. He could see 7 different items, each one unique and strange. The first was a liquid that glowed pale blue. The crystal's voice spoke in his head, explaining that these were the tears of the singing kelp from a planet called Aquilise. The kelp only released these tears during a rare alignment of moons. The next alignment would happen in 5 days. The second ingredient was a bright red pepper that seemed to burn with inner fire. Starfire peppers, the voice said, grown only in the volcanic asteroid belt of Ignis. They had to be picked at the exact moment of a volcanic eruption, or they would lose their power. The third item was honey that sparkled like liquid gold. Memory honey, made by telepathic creatures on a forest moon called Verdania. These creatures could sense emotions and memories. They would only give their honey to those with pure intentions. The fourth ingredient was a small vial of light, essence of dawn, captured from the first sunrise on a specific planet. It represented hope and new beginnings. The fifth was a crystal formation that looked like frozen laughter. Crystallized laughter, found in ancient caverns where joy had echoed for so long that it became solid. The sixth was a handful of grain seeds, ancient grain from a long-dead civilization. These seeds have been preserved for thousands of years in a hidden seed bank. The seventh and final ingredient made Daesung gasp. It was the yolk of a phoenix egg. Phoenix egg yolk, golden and shimmering with power. Phoenixes were legendary creatures, almost as rare as dragons. When the visions faded, Daesung lowered the crystal. His head spun with all the information. These ingredients are scattered across the galaxy. How am I supposed to find them all in 30 days? I will guide you, Hanul said. I know the paths between worlds, and I can help protect you from danger. Daesung looked at the small dragon. No offense, but you're not very big. How can you protect me? Hanul's eyes gleamed with amusement. Size is not everything. Dragons have abilities beyond what you can see. Before Daesung could respond, the door to the restaurant suddenly opened. Both of them turned to look. A young woman stood in the doorway. She had short black hair and wore a simple gray jumpsuit with grease stains on the sleeves. Her eyes went wide when she saw Daesung sitting on the floor with a dragon. Ji-won, Daesung stood up quickly. What are you doing here? Ji-won was his former sous chef. She had worked at Earthly Flavors for 3 years before leaving 6 months ago. She had gotten a job at one of the big corporate food facilities. Better pay, she had said. More stable. I heard you were closing down, Ji-won said, stepping inside. She kept staring at Hanul. I came to say goodbye. But is that a dragon? Yes, Daesung said simply. There was no point in denying it. Ji-won walked closer, her eyes full of wonder. I've never seen a dragon before. I thought they were just stories. We are very real, Hanul said, making Ji-won jump at the sound of the dragon's voice. It talks, Ji-won exclaimed. Obviously, Hanul replied with patience. Daesung quickly explained the situation to Ji-won. He told her about Bora's illness, the meal of remembrance, and the 7 ingredients they needed to find. As he spoke, Ji-won's expression changed from surprise to excitement. This is incredible, she said when he finished. A real quest to save a dragon's life. And you're going to do it? Daesung hesitated. I'm thinking about it, but I don't know if I can. My ship needs repairs. I have no money for fuel or supplies, and I've never traveled to most of these places. Ji-won was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I have money. I've been saving my salary from the corporate job. What? Daesung looked at her in surprise. I hate that job, Ji-won admitted. Every day, I just load ingredients into machines, press buttons, watch food come out in perfect portions. There's no creativity, no passion, no soul. I've been miserable for months. She looked at him with determination. Let me come with you. Let me help. I can pay for repairs and supplies. And you'll need an assistant for cooking, won't you? Daesung didn't know what to say. He had assumed he would do this alone, with just Hanul to guide him. But having Ji-won along would make things easier. She was a skilled cook and a hard worker. Are you sure? He asked. This could be dangerous. We might not make it back. I'm sure, Ji-won said firmly. I became a cook because I love creating food that made people happy. I lost that feeling at the corporate job. Maybe this journey will help me find it again. Hanul looked between them and nodded approval. 2 cooks are better than 1, especially for such an important task. Daesung felt something stirring in his chest. Hope, maybe, or purpose. He had spent the whole day feeling defeated and lost. But now, standing here with Ji-won and Hanul, he felt different. He felt like maybe he could do this. Maybe he could make something good happen. All right, he said, we'll do this together. Ji-won smiled, the first real smile he had seen from her in a long time. When do we leave? As soon as possible, Hanul said. Every day matters. They spent the next few hours making plans. Ji-won went to her apartment to pack and withdraw her savings. Dae-sung loaded the boxes into a ship and made a list of repairs they needed. Hanul studied the crystal, memorizing the routes they would take. Just as they were finishing, there was a knock on the restaurant door. Dae-sung opened it carefully. An alien stood outside. He was tall and thin, with gray skin and 4 arms. His species was called Zalari, known for being shrewd merchants. This particular Zalari wore expensive clothes and multiple rings on his fingers. "Hello," the alien said in a smooth voice. "My name is Tavik. I am a trader of rare goods. I heard you might be looking for unusual ingredients." Dae-sung felt alarm bells ringing in his head. "How did you hear that?" Tavik smiled, showing pointed teeth. "Word travels fast on the station. I make it my business to know interesting things. The meal of remembrance is very interesting indeed." Hanul moved to stand between Dae-sung and the merchant. "What do you want?" "Just to offer some advice," Tavik said, raising his 4 hands in a peaceful gesture. "You should know that others are searching for the same ingredients. Powerful others. The Syndicate, to be specific." "The Syndicate?" Dae-sung had heard of them. They were the corporation that controlled most food production in the galaxy. "Yes," Tavik said. "They want to study the meal of remembrance. If they can learn how to synthesize emotion in food, they will control everything. No one will ever cook traditionally again." The air felt suddenly cold. Dae-sung realized his journey was more complicated than he thought. "Thank you for the warning," he said carefully. Tavik nodded and turned to leave, but he paused and looked back. "Be careful out there. And if you need anything at all, you can find me in the market district. I help those who help me." Then the merchant walked away, disappearing into the station's crowded streets. Dae-sung closed the door and looked at Hanul. "This just got more dangerous, didn't it?" "Yes," Hanul agreed, "but we cannot stop now. Bora is counting on us." Dae-sung nodded. He had made his choice. Now he had to see it through, no matter what dangers lay ahead. 3 days later, Dae-sung's ship broke through the atmosphere of Aquilise. The entire planet was covered in deep blue ocean. No land anywhere, just water that stretched as far as the eye could see. Below the surface, enormous kelp forests swayed in the gentle currents like underwater trees. Ji-won sat in the co-pilot seat, checking the navigation systems. "The crystal says we need to dive to the eastern kelp forest. That's where the singing kelp grows." "How deep?" Dae-sung asked, guiding the ship toward the coordinates. "About 500 meters," Ji-won replied. "The ship's diving equipment should handle it." Hanul perched on the console between them, wings folded tight against its small body. "The moon alignment happens tonight. We must harvest the tears before dawn, or we will have to wait another year." Dae-sung nodded and brought the ship down to the water's surface. With a smooth transition, the vessel converted to submarine mode and slipped beneath the waves. The world outside turned blue and quiet. As they descended, strange fish swam past the windows. Some were transparent, their bones visible inside. Others glowed with soft light, creating patterns in the dark water. Ji-won pressed her face against the glass, watching everything with wonder. "It's beautiful," she whispered. The kelp forest appeared below them like a massive underwater jungle. The plants were huge, taller than buildings, their long strands reaching up toward the surface. The ship's lights illuminated them as they moved deeper. Suddenly, something large passed in front of them. Dae-sung hit the brakes, and the ship stopped. A creature floated before them, blocking their path. It looked like a giant turtle, but its shell was made of crystal that reflected the ship's lights in rainbow colors. The creature's eyes were ancient and knowing. "That is a guardian," Hanul said quietly. "The protectors of Aquilise. We must ask permission to harvest the kelp tears." "How do we do that?" Dae-sung asked. "Go outside," Hanul said. "Show respect. Offer something in return." Dae-sung looked at Ji-won. She nodded, understanding what he was thinking. They both got up and moved to the airlock. Dae-sung grabbed 2 breathing helmets from the wall and handed one to Ji-won. Then he picked up a sealed container. he had prepared before they left the station. The airlock opened and water rushed in. The pressure equalized, and they swam out into the ocean. The water was cold, but not unbearable. Dae-sung kicked his legs, moving toward the guardian creature. The giant turtle watched them approach with calm eyes. Dae-sung stopped a respectful distance away and bowed his head. Then he opened a container he carried. Inside was a simple meal he had prepared, rice mixed with vegetables and a light sauce. He had made it with care, just as his grandmother taught him. The food floated out of the container, pieces drifting in the water. The guardian moved forward slowly and opened its massive mouth. The food disappeared inside. The creature closed its eyes, seeming to taste and consider. For a long moment, nothing happened. Dae-sung's heart pounded in his chest. What if the guardian refused them? What if they had come all this way for nothing? Then the guardian's eyes opened, and it nodded once. The creature moved aside, creating a clear path to the kelp forest. Dae-sung felt relief wash over him. They had passed the first test. He and Ji-won swam down to the kelp forest. Hanul had explained that the singing kelp would be obvious when they found it. Regular kelp was dark green or brown, but the singing kelp was pale blue and seemed to glow from within. They searched through the massive plants, careful not to damage anything. The forest was like a maze, with kelp strands crossing and weaving together. Small fish darted between the plants. Curious about the visitors, Ji-won spotted it first. She grabbed Dae-sung's arm and pointed. There, in a small clearing surrounded by regular kelp, grew 3 strands of pale blue kelp. They swayed in the current, and even underwater, Dae-sung could hear a faint humming sound. The singing kelp was actually singing. They swam closer. According to Hanul's instructions, they needed to wait for the exact moment when the 3 moons of Aquilise aligned in the sky above. Only then would the kelp release its tears. Dae-sung looked up through the water. The surface was far above, but he could see the moonlight filtering down. He checked the timer on his wrist. 10 minutes until alignment. They waited in silence, floating near the kelp. The singing grew louder as the minutes passed. The sound was beautiful and sad at the same time, like someone remembering happy memories from long ago. Finally, the timer beeped. Dae-sung looked up and saw 3 circles of light appear on the water's surface. The moons were aligned. The singing kelp began to glow brighter. The humming reached a peak, filling the water with sound. Then, from the tips of each kelp strand, a single drop formed. The drops were perfect spheres, glowing with inner light. They floated in the water like tiny stars. Dae-sung quickly pulled out 3 collection vials from his belt. He carefully guided each tear into a separate vial and sealed them tight. The moment he captured the last tear, the kelp's glow faded and the singing stopped. They had the first ingredient. The journey back to the ship was quick. Once inside and dried off, they set course to their next destination, the volcanic asteroid belt of Ignis. This trip would take 4 days through hyperspace. During the journey, they settled into a routine. Dae-sung would pilot, while Ji-won prepared meals from their supplies. Hanul spent most of the time resting, conserving energy. In the evenings, they would sit together and talk. "Tell me about your grandmother," Ji-won said one night as they ate dinner. Dae-sung smiled, remembering. She was a small woman, but strong. She ran a restaurant on Earth for 40 years. Every day, she would wake up before sunrise to prepare the food. She believed that cooking was a way to show love. "Is that why you became a chef?" Ji-won asked. "Yes," Dae-sung said. "I wanted to make people happy the way she did. When I was young, I would watch her cook. She never rushed. Every ingredient was treated with respect. Every dish was made with care." He paused, looking down at his plate. "I always wondered if I lived up to her example." "You did," Hanul said softly from its perch. "That is why I chose you." On the 4th day, they arrived at the Ignis asteroid belt. The asteroids floated in space near a massive red giant star. The heat was intense. Even inside the ship, many of the asteroids had active volcanoes on their surface, spewing lava into space. "The starfire peppers grow on the largest asteroid," Hanul explained. "But we must land during an eruption. The peppers only ripen when exposed to fresh lava." That sounds extremely dangerous, Ji-won said. It is, Hanul agreed, but there's no other way. Dae-sung guided the ship toward the largest asteroid. They could see rivers of lava flowing across its surface. The whole asteroid glowed red and orange with heat. As they approached, a transmission came through on their communication system. A rough voice spoke in Standard Galactic. Unidentified ship, state your business. Dae-sung pressed the reply button. We're here to harvest starfire peppers. We mean no harm. There was a long pause. Then the voice said, land at coordinates I'm sending. Someone will meet you. A set of numbers appeared on their screen. Dae-sung followed them to a landing pad built on a cooler part of the asteroid. As they touched down, they saw a group of miners standing nearby. They were Gorons, a species adapted to extreme heat. Their skin was thick and rocky, like living stone. One Goron stepped forward as Dae-sung, Ji-won, and Hanul exited the ship. The miner was large and intimidating, with orange eyes that glowed like embers. I am Sung-ho, the Goron said. His voice was the same one from the radio. Why do you want the starfire peppers? Before Dae-sung could answer, Sung-ho's eyes widened. He stepped closer, studying Dae-sung's face. Wait, I know you. You're the human chef from the space station. Earthly flavors. Dae-sung was surprised. You been to my restaurant? 3 years ago, Sung-ho said, and his stern expression softened. I was traveling through the station. I was sick, homesick, lonely. Your food, it reminded me of home, the care you put into it. I never forgot that meal. Relief flooded through Dae-sung. Thank you. That means a lot. Sung-ho nodded. You helped me when I needed it. Now I will help you. Come. The next eruption happens in 1 hour. I will take you to where the peppers grow. The Goron led them across the asteroid's surface, providing heat-resistant suits for Dae-sung and Ji-won. They climbed over rocky terrain until they reached the edge of an active volcano. Below, in the volcanic crater, Dae-sung could see plants growing. They had thick stems and leaves that seemed to be made of fire. The peppers themselves were bright red and pulsed with heat. When the volcano erupts, you must climb down quickly, Sung-ho explained. Pick the peppers before the lava reaches them. Then get out fast. You will have maybe 3 minutes. Dae-sung looked at Ji-won. She was scared but determined. He felt the same way. The ground began to shake. The volcano was waking up. Now! Sung-ho shouted. Dae-sung and Ji-won rappelled down into the crater using ropes. The heat was overwhelming, even with the protective suits. They reached the pepper plants and began picking quickly, dropping the peppers into collection bags. Behind them, they heard a deep rumble. Lava was rising from below. Faster! Ji-won yelled. They grabbed the last few peppers and signaled to be pulled up. The ropes went taut, and Sung-ho and his fellow miners hauled them up with incredible strength. Just as they reached the crater's edge, lava burst upward, filling the space where they had been standing seconds before. They collapsed on solid ground, breathing hard. That was too close. Ji-won gasped. But they had done it. They had the second ingredient. 2 down, 5 to go. The next 12 days passed in a blur of travel and danger. Dae-sung, Ji-won, and Hanul collected the remaining ingredients one by one. Each location brought new challenges. The memory honey came from Redania, a moon covered in dense forests. The telepathic bee creatures had tested Ji-won's intentions by reading her emotions. She had to share her happiest memory while standing completely still as thousands of the creatures flew around her. When they sensed only pure feelings, they brought her their golden honey. The essence of dawn required perfect timing. They had waited on a cold planet for 3 days until the exact moment when its sun rose for the first time in its yearly cycle. Dae-sung captured the first rays of light in a special vial, preserving the feeling of hope that came with each new beginning. The crystallized laughter was hidden deep in ancient caverns on an abandoned world. They had crawled through narrow tunnels for hours, following the sound of distant joy that had somehow turned solid over thousands of years. The crystal sang when touched, releasing waves of happiness. The ancient grain came from a preserved seed bank built by a civilization that no longer existed. The facility was automated, its robots still maintaining the seeds after millions of years. Dae-sung had to solve a complex puzzle to prove he was worthy of taking some seeds. The phoenix egg yolk was the hardest to obtain. They had found an injured phoenix on a desolate asteroid. Its wing was broken, and it was dying. Dae-sung and Ji-won spent 2 days nursing it back to health, feeding it special food and treating its wounds with gentle care. When the phoenix recovered, it thanked them by giving them one of its precious eggs. Now they had all 7 ingredients, stored carefully in temperature-controlled containers. But as their ship approached the space station where their journey began, Dae-sung felt uneasy. Something was wrong. There are too many ships near the station, Ji-won said, looking at the scanner. Military vessels. Hanul moved to the window and looked out. The small dragon's body went rigid. The Syndicate. They found us. Before Dae-sung could react, their communication system crackled to life. A cold female voice filled the cabin. Human vessel, this is Commander Veskra of the Syndicate Fleet. You are carrying items of interest to us. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Dae-sung's hands tightened on the controls. What do we do? Hanul closed its eyes. Hold on tight. I will get us out of here. How? Ji-won asked. We can't outrun military ships. Dragons have abilities you have not seen yet, Hanul said. Blue light began to glow around the small creature's body, growing brighter and brighter. Suddenly, the space in front of their ship started to tear apart. It looked like someone was cutting through the fabric of reality itself. A swirling portal of light and energy opened before them. Go through, Hanul shouted, strain evident in its voice. Dae-sung didn't hesitate. He pushed the engines to full power and flew straight into the portal. The world turned white and weightless for a moment. Then they burst out the other side. They were no longer near the station. Instead, they floated in orbit around a small moon. The moon's surface was silver and seemed to shimmer with its own light. Dae-sung had never seen anything like it. Hanul collapsed on the console, breathing heavily. The glow around its body faded. Are you all right? Ji-won rushed to the dragon's side. I will be fine, Hanul said weakly. Creating portals takes much energy. But we are safe now. We are home. Home. Dae-sung looked at the moon with new understanding. This is where the dragons live? Yes, Hanul said. This is the hidden moon. No one can find it unless a dragon brings them here. We will be protected from the Syndicate. Dae-sung guided the ship down to the moon's surface. As they descended, he saw structures built into the mountains. They were beautiful and ancient, carved from crystal and stone. Some parts looked natural, like caves. Other parts were clearly shaped by intelligent design. Several dragons flew through the air around them. They were much larger than Hanul, with wingspans as wide as a ship. Their scales were different colors, deep purple, emerald green, silver white. They were magnificent. The ship landed on a smooth platform. When they stepped outside, the air felt different. It hummed with energy, like the whole moon was alive. An enormous dragon approached them. It was 3 times the size of their ship, with scales that shimmered like starlight. Its eyes were ancient and wise, containing knowledge from thousands of years. Welcome. The dragon said in a voice that resonated deep in their chests. I am Bitna, the eldest of this colony. Hanul has told us about you through our mental link. You have come to save young Bora. Dae-sung bowed respectfully. Yes, Elder Bitna. We have gathered all 7 ingredients for the meal of remembrance. Bitna's expression was sad. You have done well, but I must warn you, Bora's condition has worsened since Hanul left. She may not have much time remaining. Then we must start cooking immediately, Dae-sung said. Bitna nodded and turned, gesturing for them to follow with one massive wing. They walked through tunnels carved into the moon's rock. The walls glowed softly, providing light without any visible source. Other dragons watched them pass, their eyes curious but kind. Finally, they entered a large chamber. In the center lay a dragon on a bed of crystal. Even from a distance, Dae-sung could see that this was Bora. She was bigger than Hanul, but smaller than Bitna. Her scales, which should have been vibrant and colorful, were dull and gray. Her eyes were closed, and her breathing was shallow. Hanul rushed to her sister's side. Bora, I am here. I brought help. Bora's eyes opened slightly. They were cloudy and unfocused. Hano? Is that you? I cannot remember. You will remember soon, Hanol said, fighting back tears. The chef is here. He will make the meal of remembrance. Bitna led Dae Sung and Ji-won to another chamber. This one contained a kitchen unlike anything Dae Sung had ever seen. The room was carved from a single piece of crystal. In the center was a cooking area with a stove that burned with blue flame. Tools hung on the walls, some human, some alien, some from species Dae Sung didn't recognize. This kitchen has been here for 10,000 years, Bitna explained. It has been used to prepare many important meals. Now it is yours to use. Dae Sung set down his bag containing the 7 ingredients. Ji-won stood beside him, ready to help. They both looked at each other, understanding the weight of what they were about to do. Let's begin, Dae Sung said. He started by washing his hands in a basin of pure water. Then he carefully removed each ingredient from its container. The tears of the singing kelp, still glowing softly. The starfire peppers warmed the touch. The memory honey, golden and thick. The essence of dawn, captured light in a vial. The crystallized laughter, humming with joy. The ancient grain, preserved for eons. The phoenix egg yolk, shimmering with life. Dae Sung closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He thought about his grandmother and everything she taught him. He thought about why he became a chef. He thought about Bora, dying in the next chamber, her memories fading away. Then he began to cook. He started with the ancient grain, preparing it the traditional way his grandmother had shown him, slowly with care, washing each grain and cooking it with perfect timing. As he worked, he poured his emotions into the process. Love, hope, determination. Ji-won prepared the vegetables that would accompany the grain. She moved with practiced skill, her knife cutting with precision. She was focused but calm, adding her own care to the meal. Dae Sung added the memory honey to the mixture, stirring it in gently. The honey made the air smell sweet and brought back memories of happy times. He could almost see his grandmother's face, smiling at him from across the years. The starfire peppers came next. He roasted them over the blue flame until they released their heat and flavor. The peppers represented passion and intensity, reminding him of every meal he had cooked with his whole heart. The tears of the singing kelp were added drop by drop. Each tear dissolved into the mixture, bringing with it the emotion of sadness and release. It was okay to feel pain. It was part of being alive. The crystallized laughter was ground into fine powder and sprinkled over everything. When it touched the hot food, it released waves of joy. Dae Sung felt himself smiling despite the tension. The essence of dawn was opened carefully. The captured sunlight poured out like liquid gold, mixing with the other ingredients. It brought the feeling of new beginnings, of starting over, of hope for tomorrow. Finally, the phoenix egg yolk. Dae Sung cracked it open, and the golden yolk flowed into the center of the dish. It represented rebirth and transformation, the ability to rise again even after falling. As the ingredients combined, something magical happened. The meal began to glow with soft, warm light. Colors swirled through it like a living aurora. The air filled with wonderful smells that made Dae Sung think of every happy moment in his life. He could feel it. The dish was complete. The meal of remembrance was ready. But just as he reached to pick up the bowl, alarms started blaring throughout the dragon colony. Bitna's voice echoed to the chambers, urgent and worried. The syndicate has found us. They have broken through our defenses. They are coming for the meal. Dae Sung looked at Ji-won, then at the glowing bowl in his hands. They had come so far. They couldn't fail now. Go, Ji-won said firmly. Take the meal to Bora. I will help defend the entrance. Dae Sung nodded and carefully lifted the bowl. He ran back through the tunnels toward the chamber where Bora lay. Behind him, he could hear sounds of conflict, dragons roaring, energy weapons firing. The syndicate had begun their attack. He burst into Bora's chamber. Hanoa was still at her sister's side. Bora's breathing was even weaker now. I have it, Dae Sung said, kneeling beside the dying dragon. The meal of remembrance. Bora's eyes opened slightly. Is it time? Yes, Dae-sung said gently. He lifted a spoonful of the glowing meal. Let me help you remember. Dae-sung brought the spoon to Bora's mouth. The dying dragon was too weak to eat on her own, so he fed her carefully, one small bite at a time. The glowing meal touched her lips, and immediately something changed. Bora's dull eyes suddenly flickered with light. She swallowed the first bite, and a shudder ran through her entire body. Her scales, which had been gray and lifeless, began to show hints of color, deep blue, like the ocean at midnight. Another bite. Hanul urged, tears streaming down the small dragon's face. Dae-sung gave Bora another spoonful. With each bite, more memories seemed to return. Bora's eyes grew clearer. Her breathing became stronger. The colors in her scales intensified, spreading across her body like dawn breaking over a dark sky. I remember, Bora whispered, her voice growing stronger. I remember flying through the stars. I remember Hanul learning to use her wings for the first time. I remember the taste of comet dust. I remember friends I made centuries ago. I remember everything. Tears of pure joy ran down Bora's face as Dae-sung continued feeding her. The meal was working. With every spoonful, life returned to the dying dragon. Her scales now shimmered with brilliant blues and purples. Her eyes shone bright and golden, full of awareness and emotion. Outside the chamber, the sounds of battle grew louder. Explosions echoed through tunnels. Someone was shouting commands. But Dae-sung stayed focused on his task. He kept feeding Bora until the bowl was empty. When the last bite was gone, Bora sat up. She was magnificent, fully restored. She spread her wings, which filled half the chamber, and let out a cry of happiness that shook the walls. "Little sister," Bora said, turning to Hanul, "you saved me." "It was not just me," Hanul said, gesturing to Dae-sung. "This human chef prepared the meal. He traveled across the galaxy to gather the ingredients. He poured his heart into the cooking." Bora looked at Dae-sung with deep gratitude. "Human, I owe you my life. No, more than that. You gave me back my memories, my sense of self. How can I ever repay you?" Before Dae-sung could answer, Bitna appeared in the chamber entrance. The elder dragon looked worried. "Bora, thank the stars you're recovered. But we have a serious problem. The syndicate leader, Veskra, has breached our defenses. She is demanding the recipe for the meal of remembrance. She has threatened to destroy the entire colony if we refuse." Bora's expression hardened. "Take me to her." The dragons led Dae-sung through the tunnels to the main entrance of the colony. Ji-won was there, standing beside several dragons who formed a protective barrier. Beyond them, syndicate soldiers stood with weapons drawn. In front of them all was Veskra. She was a tall alien with smooth purple skin and 4 eyes that glowed red with anger. She wore expensive armor and carried herself with absolute authority. When she saw Bora walking toward her, fully restored and healthy, her eyes widened in shock. "Impossible," Veskra said. "The spirit fade has no cure." "You are wrong," Bora said calmly. "The meal of remembrance cured me." Veskra's shock quickly turned to greed. "Then you must give me the recipe. The syndicate must have this knowledge. We could cure diseases, restore hope, bring back lost memories to millions across the galaxy. By putting it in machines and selling it for profit," Dae-sung said, stepping forward. "By taking something precious and turning it into just another product." Veskra turned her 4 eyes on him. "You are the cook, the human who made this meal. I am offering you wealth beyond imagination. A chain of restaurants across the entire galaxy with your name. Fame. Respect. All you have to do is share your recipe and cooking method with our scientists." Dae-sung remembered his failed restaurant, the empty tables, the boxes of equipment, the feeling of defeat when he locked the door for the last time. Part of him wanted to accept, to never feel that failure again. But then he looked at Bora, alive and whole. He looked at Hanul, whose desperate plea had pulled him back from giving up. He looked at Ji-won, who had rediscovered her love of cooking on this journey. "No," Dae-sung said firmly. "Some things cannot be owned or replicated. The meal of remembrance works because it is made with genuine emotion, with love and care, with a piece of the cook's soul. Your machines cannot do that. No matter how advanced your technology becomes, it cannot create what comes from the heart. Veskra's face twisted with anger. Then I will take it by force. I will dissect your brain if I must understand how you did it. The Syndicate soldiers raised their weapons. The dragons prepared to defend. The air crackled with tension. Battle seemed inevitable. Wait, Daesung said, raising his hands. Let me make you something. Not the meal of remembrance, just a simple dish. If after eating it, you still want to take the recipe by force, I will not resist. Veskra studied him suspiciously. Why would you do this? Because I am a cook, Daesung said simply. It is what I do. After a long moment, Veskra nodded. Very well, but no tricks. Daesung walked back into the colony, to the crystal kitchen. Ji-won followed him, confused. What are you doing? Trust me, Daesung said quietly. He gathered simple ingredients from the supplies they had brought. Nothing rare or magical. Just vegetables, rice, broth, and basic seasonings. He began to make soup. His grandmother's soup, the one she made for him when he was sick as a child. The one that always made him feel safe and loved. He worked slowly with care. He thought about his grandmother as he chopped the vegetables. He thought about her small restaurant on Earth. He thought about every person he'd ever cooked for, and how food had the power to connect people across all boundaries. 20 minutes later, the soup was ready. It was simple, nothing fancy, but it smelled wonderful, warm and comforting and full of home. Daesung carried the bowl out to where Veskra waited. He offered it to her, without words. Veskra took the bowl suspiciously. She looked at it for a long moment, then lifted it to her lips and drank. The change was immediate. Veskra's 4 eyes went wide. Her hands began to shake. She drank more, faster, as if desperate. When the bowl was empty, she lowered it slowly. Tears were running down her face. I remember, Veskra whispered, before the Syndicate, before I became obsessed with control and profit. I was young. My parent made soup like this. Every evening, we would sit together and eat. They would ask about my day. They would listen. They would smile. She looked at Daesung with wonder and pain. I forgot. I forgot what food used to mean. I forgot why it mattered. She sank to her knees, still holding the empty bowl. What have I become? I wanted to control food production, to bring order to the galaxy, but I destroyed the very thing that makes food special. The connection, the love, the humanity. Daesung knelt beside her. It is not too late. You can change. Veskra looked at him, then at the dragons, then at her soldiers. Stand down, she ordered. We are leaving. But, Commander, one soldier protested. I said stand down. Veskra stood up, her voice firm. I need to think. I need to remember who I was before ambition consumed me. The Syndicate forces lowered their weapons and began to retreat. Veskra looked at Daesung one last time. Thank you, Chef. You showed me something I thought was lost forever. Then she and her forces boarded their ships and left the hidden moon. Silence fell over the colony. Then Bitna began to laugh. A deep, joyful sound that echoed through the mountains. Soon all the dragons were laughing, and Ji-won joined in, and even Daesung found himself smiling. They had done it. Against all odds, they had succeeded. Over the following days, Daesung and Ji-won stayed with the dragons as honored guests. They learned dragon stories and shared human tales. They cooked meals for the colony, and the dragons praised every dish. On the final day, Bora called Daesung to her chamber. You saved my life, human. More than that, you reminded me why life is worth living. I want to give you something. She reached up and pulled a single scale from her chest. It glowed with inner light, shimmering blue and purple. This scale will mark you as a friend of dragons. Wherever you go in the galaxy, those who respect us will welcome you. It will also serve as a beacon. Anyone in need will be able to find you. Daesung accepted the scale with gratitude. Thank you, but I do not know what I will do next. I think you do, Hanol said, appearing beside them. You will do what you were always meant to do. You will cook. You will teach. You will share the gift of emotional cooking with the galaxy before it is forgotten forever. Daesung realized the small dragon was right. He did not want to return to Earth. He did not want to open another stationary restaurant. He wanted to travel, to teach others how to cook with heart, to preserve a tradition before machines replace it completely. Will you come with me? He asked to Noel. The small dragon's eyes sparkled with joy. I would be honored. I want to learn everything humans know about cooking, and I want to share dragon wisdom with those who will listen. Ji-won stepped forward. I am going back to the station. I want to reopen earthly flavors. Sung-ho, the miner from Ignis, contacted me. He wants a partner with me. We will keep the restaurant alive while you travel. Daesung hugged her. Thank you for everything. 6 months passed. Daesung's ship, now properly repaired and improved, traveled from world to world. Everywhere he went, he taught cooking classes, not just to humans, but to all species. He showed them how to feel the dough when making bread, how to taste with all their senses, how to put emotion into their creations. Hanul was always by his side, translating when needed and offering dragon perspectives on food and flavor. Together, they documented recipes and techniques. They recorded the stories behind traditional dishes from 100 different cultures. One day, they received a message from G1. Earthly Flavors was thriving. The restaurant had a waiting list 3 months long. Word had spread about the human chef who traveled the galaxy, and people wanted to taste the food from his tradition. Daesung smiled as he read the message. Then he looked around the simple kitchen on a distant colony world. A group of alien children sat at tables, watching him knead dough. They were eager to learn. One child raised a tentacle. Teacher Daesung, how do you know when the bread is ready? Daesung thought about his grandmother. He thought about everything he had learned on his journey. He thought about the meal of remembrance and the simple soup that changed Vesker's heart. You put your heart into it, he said gently, and your heart will tell you when it is ready. Cooking is not just about following steps. It is about connection. It is about love. It is about sharing a piece of yourself with others. Hanul, perched on a nearby counter, nodded with satisfaction. Outside the window, stars glittered in the vast darkness of space. Somewhere out there, Bor was healthy and happy. Somewhere, Vesker was learning to value things beyond profit. Somewhere, Ji-won and Sung-ho were serving meals made with care. And here, in this simple kitchen on a forgotten colony, Daesung was doing what he loved most: teaching, creating, connecting. His restaurant had closed, yes, but his real work had only just begun. The small dragon had tugged his sleeve and said, "Don't go," at exactly the right moment. And because he listened, because he chose to help, everything had changed, not just for Bora or for himself, but for everyone who would learn that food made with heart could never be replaced by machines. Daesung smiled and continued teaching, his hands in the dough, his heart in the work, his grandmother's spirit watching over him with pride.